That intention behind what you're doing is what wakes you up every morning. So an intention of bringing people together and, just using them to get your next career promotion or your next career goal or whatever achievements you want to do, that's not selfless, right? And the intent will slowly start to come out, and this is what you'll see. Now, an intent, for you to have this long-term intent, you need to be true and honest and authentic to what are you really wanting to do. So I'm here to achieve X, not just by myself, whether I stay or whether I go. This team collectively needs to achieve this. And so you almost need to make that goal needs to be bigger than any single person in the organization. So this is our North Star. Whoever stays, whoever goes, that North Star will not change. And everyone that comes in, that's the culture that we live and breathe.
Hi, I'm Tracy Lovejoy.
And I'm Shannon Lucas. We are the co-CEOs of Catalyst Constellations, which is dedicated to empowering Catalyst to create bold, powerful change in the world.
This is our podcast, Move Fast, Break Shit, Burn Out, where we speak with Catalyst executives about ways to successfully lead transformation in large organizations.
And today I am super excited to have Amit Sidhpura with us. For over 15 plus years, Amit has pursued his passion for helping individuals and organizations transform and grow. He's a global peace ambassador, a passionate speaker and coach, presenting globally at conferences and workshops, including the World Economic Forum. He's currently the global strategy leader for HR and talent transformation consulting at IBM. Freaking coolest title ever. He's also a certified meditation coach and founder of the City Monk and Project Transformation, sharing his expertise with leaders and entrepreneurs to connect with their, quote, inner superpowers, unquote, and live a fulfilling life. Thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. Really excited about this.
Awesome. So I did a very small overview of your journey, but we'd love to have you share about your journey, especially through a catalytic lens, maybe sharing a few career highlights that you're proud of so we can see your catalytic powers.
Yeah, sure. So I guess if I start, there was, I was working for the government when I first left university. I was working there, very bureaucratic, a lot of red tape in all kinds of senses, right? And I was almost looking for that spark, thinking, hold on, work is supposed to be this way. This is what I saw on videos. This is what I feel. And I left that organization, and I was quite lucky. I started working for at that point, it wasn't a startup. It was an organization that was growing rapidly. I was there for some time. We did 14 acquisitions. I basically joined as a junior. I was promoted every 6 to 8 months. So I basically became a board member. And at that time, we started to outmuscle IBM in some very, very large deals. And then IBM signed us up as a business partner, and then we were acquired for $1.6 billion. And we became the baseline of basically IBM's HR value proposition. So then joining IBM, it's almost like, the analogy that one of the leaders gave me back in the day when I used to report directly into the CMO. And one of the things he told us is that we've gone from college football to the NFL. And he goes, not everyone is going to like playing in this stadium, in this setting, in this park, but some people are really going to love it. And it was almost like a rocket from that sense onwards, right? I was fortunate to travel fairly often, so various countries around the world, working with different people, different cultures, spending a lot of time in the US. And then post of that, I was then looking at opportunities to see what might be my kind of next move. And again, if I look at it from a Catalyst perspective, one of the things I was looking at when I was working within the organization or as part of my rapid growth is I was looking at gaps. I'm very curious as a person. So one of the things that I was noticing is that if something was broken or it wasn't being done right, or it wasn't anyone's responsibility, if it was that gray area, it would just be fun for me to learn how to try and solve that. So I would kind of just solve things, and every so often when I would have one-to-ones with my bosses, I would just tell them, hey, so-and-so wasn't working, so-and-so was broken, and I kind of thought I've done this, what do you think? And because of that, I was able to more or less create my own job titles, my own job roles, or job roles first, and then job titles as a reflection of that. And that gave me an opportunity to play in a very, very different way. I didn't like that whole, and I guess, having worked at the government, it left that ounce there of, I don't want to be in a structure which is very rigid. I just want to be in a place or an environment where I'm able to grow and do things I love doing. And everything for me, to be honest, at work is just very playful. So it's almost like being in a sand pot or a sand pit, and you're just, basically just having fun, trying different things, looking at what's working, what's not working, and how do we change it. And I love patterns, so I spend a lot of time looking at data, looking at patterns. How do we consecutively improve something? How do we make something better? How do we make something faster? So that's kind of the passion behind that. And then I moved to Singapore, and I was a leader of Asia Pacific. So again, very, very different from a cultural perspective, having spent so much time in the UK or parts of Europe and the US. And that's when it was almost like my dream job. So before that, I was traveling, I was working at probably 80, 90 hours a week. So working very, very crazy hours. And it was almost for this kind of dream job, dream role. And then I remember when I was in Singapore, I lived in the marina. I lived on the 37th floor of an apartment overlooking the whole marina. And during that time, when I moved from, I was based in London at the time, when I moved over, there was so much business travel happening, so much other work happening at the same time while my things were being shipped out and sent over to Singapore. But it was only when, I moved into the apartment, the moving people came in, they set everything up, and then they left, and I'm standing on my balcony, and I was just like, whoa, I'm lonely. What the hell have I just done? That's when everything kind of really settled in. And I guess if I look back in my career, the way I had positioned myself is when I saw someone successful, or someone that I felt was successful, or that person that I idolized at that point, I was like, how do I become something like that? This person looks happy, this person looks successful. And I guess that's the thing, is that I was always looking for happiness, but because we live in a very practical world and we've never really been taught this, we kind of equal it to success. So success makes you happy. And so I'm sitting there, on the balcony on the 37th floor, hearing the traffic and looking there, and I'm just like, whoa, what have I done? Do I really want this? Will this make me happy? And that kind of continued. And then from then onwards, I was asking myself more of the question of, what am I here to do? What is my purpose? Because it's very easy to go from job to job. You get promoted, you make more money, you travel, you do all these fine things in life, but what are you doing it for? So I love the experience aspect, but then it almost felt that it should be something further, right? There should be some kind of calling. There should be something that when I do that, I'm feeling satisfied. Because what I always felt is when I was going from role to role, and I, from a junior to a board member to a leader, I excelled in that pretty fast. And when I was always doing it, I was always like, okay, maybe this will make me happy. Maybe this will be that kind of, that role or that effect, which I feel more grounded, or I feel more meaning or more purpose. But that just carried on. And that was something that was always left as a gap and as an answer. And when I was based in Singapore for 2 years, that was a time where I really started to reflect on things of what would I like to do, and what does this world need? And what do I want to kind of, how do I fill that gap, or how do I address that?
Oh, thank you for sharing. That's so amazing. We have so many more questions, but I just want to understand in your own words how you relate to the concept of catalyst, and maybe how that supported you on your journey to become an executive.
So my definition or my understanding, I guess, of catalyst is someone that's doing something which is game changing, right? So it's addressing values that need to be addressed. And it's looking at aspects which are more we-based, so more collective. Now, when I look at it in the things that I've experienced and the mentors that I've had in my life, the aspect they've always told me is you need to be a selfless leader. You're here to guide others. And this is what you see. So a lot of leaders over the years I worked with some great leaders. I worked with some leaders which are like, okay. But what you will see is those leaders that really stick out, they're the ones that have a very bold vision. And they're very good at articulating what that vision is, because it's aligned to their purpose, it's aligned to their meaning. But at the same time, it's just not a fancy phrase on a business card, on a PowerPoint presentation, or a piece of paper. They're the living, breathing message behind that. And that's the difference, right? It's very easy to come up with some good narratives, some good strategies, and kind of preach people to say, yeah, let's do this. But if you start to live those traits, you start to live those values, you become the reflection of that message. And this is what, I always share with people, that in order for me to do something, I need to be there first. I need to have experienced it. I need to be the reflection of that message. And then I need to power people together. And you need to do it in a selfless way, because that I guess that intention behind what you're doing is what wakes you up every morning. So an intention of bringing people together and, just using them to get your next career promotion or your next career goal or whatever achievements you want to do, that's not selfless, right? And the intent will slowly start to come out. And this is what you'll see. Now, an intent, for you to have this long-term intent, you need to be true and honest and authentic to what are you really wanting to do. So I'm here to achieve X, not just by myself, whether I stay or whether I go, this team collectively needs to achieve this. And so you almost need to make that goal needs to be bigger than any single person in the organization. So this is our North Star. Whoever stays, whoever goes, that North Star will not change. And everyone that comes in, that's the culture that we live and breathe. And this is what's really, really important. And I guess when you look at around the world and you look at leaders across the organization, this is one thing this world is really struggling with, where we're going through a number of challenges and people are just doing the same old stuff. Is the intent really there? Not, I don't think it is. And if the intent was there, at some point it slowly started to change away from we to I. And as it comes into the I, your decision making is very different. Your thoughts, your behaviors are very different. You don't reflect it, but you're then preaching to other people to say, we need to do this, we need to do that. But if you're not living and breathing it, it's not going to be reflected anywhere else within the business.
As Shannon said, my brain has so many places to follow up. So forgive me, I have to pick one in my follow-up question right now. Typically, we'd move to ask, like, what are the challenges you faced as a Catalyst executive? But I want to go back and frame a particular challenge. So you are in your beautiful apartment, feeling lonely and unhappy, right? Which I think ties, I'm guessing ties to what you're sharing right now in terms of collective success versus the I. And I'll tee up for you with Catalyst, something that we see in the research is that they also will be seeking the success, and it's actually incredibly elusive. Like, you actually were able to articulate, like, I got 14 promotions, I was sitting on the board. For Catalyst, and I'm guessing this is in your story too, it's part of why I share it, when you're seeking transformation versus, promotions, it almost never arrives while you're still in the job fully.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that way, when you're seeking success, you almost never feel successful. Yeah. So not only are you potentially seeking the wrong thing, but the thing you are seeking almost never materializes. Like, you're just always like on to the next mountain.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so I'd love to frame and have you help us think about, how did you overcome the challenge of sitting alone, lonely in your apartment, working for the I, 80 hours, 90 hours a week? Like, fill us with wisdom.
So if we look back at that, and that's 100% correct, because you're doing something, right? If I look at it, what you'll generally see is that you're running away from certain aspects in your life. So certain challenges are arising. You don't know how to deal with those challenges. You don't know what to do. So it's very easy to kind of run away from those challenges and kind of just, hide at work. So then you start to fire that piece, right? Because it's a balanced life. Now, what I slowly started to see is that things that I was running away from, or challenges that I was being faced with in my personal life, I didn't know how to address. So it's very easy for me to leave that and come here and just basically be at work. Things were working, things were within my control. I was being promoted every so often. But then at some point you hit that wall. Because what you realize is that I'm at work, or I'm within his personal life, there is no difference. But in the mind, it's almost like, oh, when I go to work, I dress like this. When I'm at home, I dress like this. But there's absolutely no difference. And then when you start to look at the behavioral patterns, what you see is things that you suck with at work. It's very easy to blame, yourself and play that guilt role. Very easy to blame colleagues. Very easy to blame that situation. But the exact same pattern, when you start looking at the nuances of those patterns, you face the exact same patterns at home within your personal life. And at some point, those patterns will slowly start to catch up with you. Because, to be honest and to be completely fair, success is pretty easy in this material world, right? You just need to keep focus somewhere. Keep focus somewhere, things happen, right? You can put a focus anywhere, things happen. So if you're just doing it for that success, you're doing it for that pay rises, for that kind of life, it's very easy to live that life, right? But then you almost question it to say, I'm living that life, but for what? For who? Looks great, So it's very easy for people to say, oh my God, you've done this, you've done that. But I'm the one who knew, the front end of the story and the back end of the story. So I knew what was happening. But other people see this kind of facade.
So how have you overcome these challenges?
So a lot of it was, I go to patterns, right? So this is what I slowly started to pay more attention for, based on the things that I was facing as challenges, based on the things that I was, quote unquote, running away from. Slowly, I started to realize that, having lived in Singapore for almost 3 months at that point, those similar patterns slowly started to arise again. And I was just like, whoa, okay, hold on. I'm in a completely different place, different people, and this is what's happening. What is happening? So I slowly started to spend some time on that just to realize that. And that was one aspect that I wanted to do. So being new, I had, you're working, but from a social perspective, you're still building up that friend circle, all of this. So I had a lot more time personally to then just reflect on things by myself. And this is one really interesting thing, right? So when I was there, I mentioned this aspect of loneliness. Now, this is one pattern that I slowly started to find out about myself, right? So during this period when I felt lonely, when I tried to make friends with others socially, I found it very, very difficult, right? And what I then started to do was just accept the fact that I'm lonely. And as I started to accept that, what I started to do is I started to enjoy my own company. I didn't limit some of the things I wanted to do in a new city, in a new country, traveling across Asia. So I started doing that. And as I became more in acceptance mode about that emotion, about that feeling, what I then saw is once I was happy with myself, then I made friends like that. It was crazy. So I slowly started to see, and this is what's very, very important, is whatever you're feeling, subconsciously you're reflecting it everywhere. So I was reflecting that loneliness everywhere I was going. So you can be in the most social environment, surrounded by tons of people, but you can still be lonely because it's a feeling that's within you. It's not being corrected from the outside. So generally what we do is we try to collect that feeling from outside, that void, but it's never really addressed within us. And that was almost where it started to click. And then I was just like, whoa, okay. So that was almost the stepping stone. And then that journey carried on. So I've been living in Zurich, Switzerland. It's coming up to 7 years. Next year, March, so 7th of March, I've been here for 7 years. And that aspect then continued. During that time, I was dating a girl who's now or dating a woman who's now my wife. And as we got married, one of the things that we wanted to do was develop and work on ourselves in a slightly different way. We never really thought about it that way. So we were reading more, going to the gym, eating healthy, doing all these things, right? And then one of the things that almost just happened by an accident was more of an inner development journey. So more of a spiritual transformation journey. And we were in tune with ourselves in that way, but I'd never really explored spirituality in that sense. And this is almost what then slowly started to open the door. And I was just like, whoa, this stuff is powerful. So people had told me about meditations before, and I said, no, I'm very rational and practical. And then it's slowly when you start to get involved in some of these practices, you start to see how rational and practical you are. There's so much deep conditioning that we have. There's so much of a facade that we've built because we keep saying to ourselves, everything's okay. We're not aware of all the stuff which is crumbling behind the scenes. And when you're able to pull that veil away and slowly start to look at soft skills that we call them, right, which are fundamental to everything that we do in our life, most of them are just crumbled away. So very quick at building skyscrapers on, on soil or on foundations which don't even exist. And then it just collapses overnight. So what you need to do is almost soft skills, power skills, whatever you want to do, those are baseline skills. And if you can't do those baseline skills, you're not going to go from walking to running anytime soon. And that's what's really, really fundamental in this world, is understanding it, that spirituality in its true sense is nothing more than being your true natural self. But we've forgotten that trait.
Right.
We're a human being, but we've forgotten how to be human beings. So we give ourselves labels to feel special or to feel superior, but we're not able to fulfill those values or those labels because of what we're trying to do. And that was almost the opportunity where I was just like, whoa, okay, this is cool.
So you're in Singapore, you begin to have this journey of awareness, of acceptance. You meet this woman, the deeper inner journey's happening. And you said earlier, we are the same person. in our personal life and our work life. And so I'm curious, how is this journey that we've heard about on the personal side showing up at work? And how are you bringing this into HR transformation today?
So it's easy, right? Because it's just understanding yourself. That's it. You don't
You
even
say
have to
that's
you
easy,
don't
but
have to use
you
the
just said
phrase.
like this is the biggest blindness that people have, right? Like,
That's what it is. It's understanding yourself. You
yeah.
imagine, so I sit with tons of execs, I sit with loads and loads of leaders every week, every day. People come to me and tell me I'm stressed. Why are you stressed? They'll say stuff. Great. You say, but why are you stressed? They'll say the same story again, but in a different perspective. They have no idea what their triggers are.
Mhm.
So if you don't know what your stress triggers are, how are you going to become de-stressed? I can't take you into a fancy workshop. I can show you a fancy model, but if you don't know what's stressing you out, the model's not even going to work. And the thing is if you give someone a very simple model, they're like, nah, I don't think this will work. And you give them a very complex one, they're like, this guy's smart. But the model is so complex, even they don't know how to use it. So they will try it for a couple of days, it won't make a difference, and then they'll move on. So this is what you'll see is that we overthink things. The simple aspects is what keeps everything running. Keep it simple, learn something, see a change, continue that change. Sounds very, very practical, but we make a complete mess of that. Now, what you need to turn around and see is that you don't need to use the word spirituality, you don't need to use anything, but you just need to tell people, just understand yourself. Because you understand the market, you understand your clients, you understand how to do these fascinating things. What about yourself? Tell me about yourself, your true self. Why
And
do you
so,
have certain thoughts? Why are there certain emotions that you keep having that you're not even in tune with? And those thoughts, those emotions, right? So something like, what is it? Between 12,000 and 60,000 thoughts we have a day. And I think it's something like 80% of those thoughts are negative. So you imagine the type of cycle that we've created, right? And 95% of those thoughts are repetitive. So what you're seeing is that because we've become disconnected from ourselves, we're not in tune with our emotions are not under our control. Because they're not under our control, it ripples into your thoughts. Thoughts are very erratic, thoughts are very negative based. And because of that, physically, we're in pain. And the body's like a pressure cooker. So it's just getting to breaking point. So whatever you do doesn't make a difference because you need to look at, well, there's something's burning inside. What is that aspect which is burning? And then what can I slowly start to change within my life?
I love the clarity, like an amazing formula. So, what would we have seen if we were your colleague? How is Amit changing, and what are you bringing into the field that you're driving and game changing in?
So a lot more open, more authentic, courage. These are the traits. So normal traits of your heart, this is what you'll see. So generally, these are the types of traits that we want to try and train the mind, right? And training the mind is almost like going to a dog and teaching it how to bark. It just does it normally, right? So we have these values, resilience, love, happiness, passion, courage, strength, empathy, all the things that people were talking about during COVID, just connect to your heart. And these are normal human being values. So we've disconnected so far away from those values. We now need to almost do training programs to help people become more human. And so this is what you see. So when you slowly start to live those traits, you work in a very different way. You automatically, it's not like I need to go into work and say, I'm here for the people, we. You just live that value. And as you live those values by being connected to yourself, what you're seeing is that you just become that collective version or that message of we. You will do things in a more empathetic way. You will think about things in ways slightly different, especially when disruption is going on like it is right now, where a lot of people have this fear-based, problems that they're dealing with, challenges that they're dealing with. You're able to bring in a boost of positivity, not because you're pretending, but this is the way you see it. This is the way you live it.
I want to keep pushing on this because for me, it's an amen. The work that we do with people, I think part of it is like the intentionality and getting in alignment with who you are and then how you're manifesting things in the world aligned to that. But given your role and, IBM has this gravitas in terms of professional consulting and this big history, I'm just really curious, like we have a 6-week class where we talk about like the hardcore change making skills and exactly what you talked about, like the power skills that power, literally the ability to create change. And so I'm just wondering, like, how do you help both IBM and your customers embrace some of the things that you're talking about to do that HR acceleration transformation?
So embedding it in terms of embedding in the way they build their strategies. So making sure that this is foundational to what they're doing. So you can do change programs, you can do, transformation programs, but again, it goes down to the people. So if the people aren't open to change, why are they not open to change? Generally, people aren't open to change because it scares them. It scares them, it's triggering certain emotions. So you need to empower people so they're able to understand themselves better. And then through that, they're able to be more collective and then start to hold that vision. So as a leader, if you're the reflection of a certain vision or a message, you need to help everyone in that team become that reflection of that message as well. And this is a message that you need to live and breathe, not just again, just repeat or just see printed somewhere. And that aspect is really important. So not everyone has the courage to do that. And so this is what you'll see. So when I mean courage, it's and I shared this analogy with someone earlier today. It's almost like when you put a tea bag into a glass of water. You can put it in for a couple of seconds, or you can put it in for a couple of minutes. Now, if we look at emotional blocks or burdens or anything like that, or suppressed emotions, it doesn't matter how long it's in there for. It's there. Once it's there, it's been infused. So all of your behavior then comes from those blocks. So people are saying, but I don't have the courage to face these things in my past. But you're living and breathing it every single day. You're just not conscious of it. So, and it's very easy to slowly get back in tune with it, right? Because there's aspects of our life we want to change. We want meaning and purpose. Meaning and purpose is here. Through our condition, we're here, and we're just looking around. What are we going to do? So you need to slowly move back, right? Move back to your true self of when you were a child, before all of those aspects happened, with the wisdom. Now, you won't just forget any of the challenges that you faced, but that sting will disappear. And sometimes those stings are there when you think about experiences or you think about people and you're like, they did this to me, and that anger's still there. Slowly, when you start doing it consciously, those charges disappear. So you're fully aware of what happened, you're fully aware of how you were treated or what you learned, but you're able to walk away with that learning of that lesson without that stimulus of that pain.
Mm. What question or problem, when executives are bringing you in to have these conversations, I'm guessing they're not asking like, I need to be more authentic and aligned with all of my things. I know that's going to make me a happier human. Like, what do they think they're bringing you in for, that this is the answer?
So most of the time it's a shock when I slowly start to talk about these things, because people expect me to come in and talk or do a presentation on something very, very different. Even when I look at it for City Monk, when I have conversations with people, they expect it to go in, it's almost in a conditioned way. And I talk about something and they're like, no one's ever said that to me. And you're just saying it's this simple. And you're like, yeah, this is what you need to do. So it is that surprise, but it's walking away and you can almost see it that that person is having those kind of aha moments, very similar to the moments I had. Because you're looking at a problem, but you're looking at it from a very different perspective. Now, when you start to look at it in a 360 view, that's when you really start to focus on the problem. And that's when the solutions slowly start to come. And this is what's really, really important, is you need to shift that perspective. Again, because of our conditioning, because our behavior traits and the way we've always been, aligned to doing something, because it's worked in the past, we've always just carried on doing it that way. And this is now what you're seeing, is now we've hit these crossroads with this disruption and with the challenges we're now facing. It's not challenges every 3 months. It's not disruption every couple of years. It's like day in, day out. So you need to change your perspective. You need to change what you're doing and how you're doing it. And this is why this aspect is so important.
It's so fascinating. And like, clearly your own personal transformation has, been the bedrock of getting you to where you are in the organization. It's not always easy for catalysts when we sort of like my guess is, I mean, because I've done similar things in terms of bringing mindfulness into large organizations. And so you become this bridger or translator. And sometimes even no matter how much we try and translate, the language that we use as catalyst can be scary to people, or the concepts are like foreign to them. And I'm just wondering like how, which also means that not a ton of catalysts make it to the super executive level. And so I'm just wondering if you can share like how has being a catalyst helped you get there, or if there's other advice, especially around the self-awareness about catalysts, to help catalysts, move up in the organization.
So I think, we look at it from that perspective, and I guess it wouldn't be honest if I turned around and said that's what you need to look at. So again, we need to look at it, I did it because I felt that's how I'm going to be happy. Because that's what, when I was growing up and through my conditioning, when I was observing things, it was like, well, I want to be like this. And then you get there and you're like, but this didn't make me happy. So one thing that I would share with people is do what makes you happy. Because doing what makes you happy is aligned to your purpose, you're aligned to your meaning, you're aligned to your values. Do that and you will thrive, because we already know you just need to put focus and effort somewhere. You put focus and effort somewhere, you will be successful. Whether it be in that organization, whether it be in another organization, but you're going to be the one who deems it a success, or whatever success looks like. So holistically, that aspect is very, very important. And the other thing that I wanted to share as well is that whenever we think of this inner work, a lot of us will call it or label it mindfulness or well-being. And then when we label it those aspects, mindfulness is, well, if I've got time to do it, I'll do it. Well-being is, if I'm broken, I'll try this stuff until I'm well and then I'll stop. What I'm turning it around and saying is just a practical aspect of life. You don't know yourself as a human being. So if you don't know yourself as a human being, how do you know what aspects and strengths you've got, right? It's almost like us turning up in a Ferrari and we're just driving it in first gear and we're enjoying it. Great. But have you ever tried going in sixth gear? You just imagine that, what the experience would be like, what the pace would be like, the enjoyment would be like. And this is what you need to remind people. So whenever I kind of do this stuff and people are like, oh, this is a mental health session. No, it's got nothing to do with mental health. It's helping you understand who you are as a human being. So we'll buy an iPhone and we'll want to learn how to use that iPhone, right? We'll buy a brand new Mac. We'll want to learn how to use that brand new Mac. Well, you're a human being. How do you learn how to be a human being? How do you operate? So this is the aspect which is really, really important to share to people. It's just that foundational aspect. You've powered something on. There's all these other gadgets inside. How are you using all those other gadgets? And you can go most of your life without knowing, oh, I had this as a skill, or I had this as as an aspect, which was very easy, but I never really used it. So fully utilizing everything you have as you do the things, it's just, that's that powerful aspect.
I love that. And, as I was alluding to earlier, I think it is, we need more people like you who can do that bridging language to put it into the brass tacks of like, you will be more successful in whatever the thing is you think you want to do right now. You might change that once you get to like reconnect with yourself again too. That's an option. But going back to, so do what makes you happy, like so smart. And you talked about how you've actually created your own role more than once, which I think, and I think Tracy probably thinks, is a great way for catalysts to, a great path for catalysts to pursue, because there's very few roles that are designated or designed for us as catalysts. That's not easy though. Like, it's scary to put yourself out there. Most leaders aren't like, we have headcount, we have the FTE set. Like, what do you mean you're going to create a new role? Do you have any advice or shared wisdom for people to be successful at that?
The thing is that, so look, the way I always look at it is anything that you do is there are going to be aspects outside of your control, aspects inside of your control. Just break it down and write that down. So we lose a lot of energy and a lot of time with, head count, budget, all of this. Who cares? It's outside of your control. Just make a note of it. Then there's going to be 3 or 4 aspects which are in your control. That's all your work. So leave those aspects. We're a normal human being, so we're going to have that kind of uproar within us. So by doing that very simple exercise, you're able to jot those things down. Jot those things down. That inner fight, that inner struggle will slow down a little bit. As it slows down, you're able to center yourself. As you're more centered, start to look at those 3, 4 aspects that are in your control. And that's where you need to do the work. Just keep working on those things and you will see it's almost like, it's like when you play chess. You just need to work on your moves. As you work on your moves, the other moves will just automatically start to happen. And that's where you need to have faith that you're doing things with the right intention. You're doing things with that value of you want to improve something in this world. And the other aspects will just change into a favorable way for you. And that's what you need to do. Just continuously keep doing that. and just keep reframing it. Aspects in your control, focus on that. There's a solution there. Any challenge that you have, again, break that challenge down. Aspects in your control, aspects outside of your control, keep looking for it. Because what we do is the minute something happens, we start focusing on all those things outside of our control. We're almost kind of blindsided, we suffer from head fog. We're not doing anything, we're not moving. So the minute you reframe that, it slowly starts to help you require or realize how much courage you need to do certain things, because you've put yourself in the comfort zone. Now, getting out of that comfort zone is going to require that bit of work. But when you start doing that, that's when all those changes will slowly start to happen. So again, you're the reflection of change. Everywhere you go, if you reflect that change or that aspect of doing something new, being more inspirational, everywhere you go, you just reflect that as an energy. You become the message of doing something in a different way. And you will just see that the path almost just lights up and it clears, and everything that's in its way will just move out. And this is almost, if you were thinking about looking for like a detailed strategy or a model, again, I keep things very, very simple. And that's always been my aspect of it, is you do what's in your control. These other aspects will just work out. And most of my career is based on that.
I love that final, like, that's where I sit, that clarity of, you had the title, we heard at the beginning, and then you actually know what that is and the power you're bringing, which is just beautiful. As we wrap up today, we'd love to hear about your favorite catalyst, past or present, who inspires you and why.
So I guess, the whole story wouldn't be complete if I talked about my mentor. So there's a gentleman that I met, and I was lucky to meet him in 2019 in Zurich. There was a session that he did next to Zurich Lake. And it was basically, so during this time, my fiance and I were looking at different aspects around development. And we came across this session called Sound of the Soul. And there was just this pull to it. I'd never really come across anything like that before. We'd never really dived into spirituality, though, we would always define ourselves as spiritual in that sense. And I went into this session, and it was a 90-minute session, and it was about 300 people or something then. It was a small kind of, I guess it's more like a workshop. He shared some things which were very, very simple, very, very easy, the same way I kind of shared that. And I was just like, well, this is easy, but it's almost everything was that aha moment. And then he said, this is great. So now you've got the knowledge. Now let's experience it. And I was just like, well, okay. So everything he talked about, he then said, you need to experience it, because you need to become the reflection of that experience. Up until you become the reflection of that experience, it's just knowledge. And so this is what you'll see a lot in the world, is that we're very, very smart at doing things. You look at coaching books, you look at all these things, but if those things work, then we wouldn't be in the situation we are as humanity. So this is what the aspect is wrong, is that we've got the knowledge, but we haven't gained the experience behind it. So we hear a lot of people saying, connect to your heart. Totally makes sense. But if you're not connected to yourself, where the hell am I? How am I going to connect back to my heart again? So he did this very powerful and profound process, and it helped us connect back to ourselves. And then all of a sudden, you're connected to yourself in a very, very different way. So his name is Maitri Dadashriji. He's a medical doctor and a transformation pioneer, and he's a founder of a movement which is called Maitri Bodh Parivar. And he started this movement about 12 years ago with a very bold vision of helping humanity experience one world, one family. Because this is what you'll see. Up until you become peace with yourself, you're able to accept yourself, you will always see a difference between myself and everyone else. But it doesn't happen with family members. This is what you'll see, your close friends. So close friends can annoy you, family members can annoy you, they're still family, they're still best friends. We accept that. Now, the minute a colleague does that, or some stranger does it, oh, how dare they speak to me like that? How dare they treat me that way? So we create this type of barrier. But that person is going through their own challenges, their own problems. So what you'll slowly start to see is when you're able to connect yourself in a more deeper, meaningful way, when someone reacts to you in a very different aspect, you're able to go beyond that anger to see what their challenge or what their pain is. So you're able to give them love, give them empathy naturally, and you're able to guide them back to correcting that. Now, one of the things that you'll see, and this is his key teaching, is the cause of suffering is the lack of love. And it's a very, very universal teaching. You can apply it everywhere. If there's a lack of love within you, it will be a ripple effect with everyone else. And this is what you'll see. So you don't have that many people talking about love in the world. And this is what you need. So when there's when there's anger, when there's hate, the only remedy for that is peace. The only remedy for that is love. And this is what the world needs, whether you're in one of the largest corporate organizations in the world or you're doing charity work somewhere. These are normal values that we've just forgotten. How do you slowly infuse that into all aspects of your life to make it more meaningful? So we're able to live a happy life. This is what we're all looking for, is happiness. We're looking for peace, and we're looking for growth. Now, so you just need to go through those three simple things and say, what is stopping you from being happy? Okay. What is stopping you from being, peaceful? What is stopping you from really growing? And that's what those three questions that I would always ask people is, that's the difference. Because very often when you ask that question, you ask people, what are you ultimately looking for in life? And they will say things and they will say things. And then towards the end, they'll just say, I just want to be happy. I just want to be content. Okay, now what's stopping you from that? Where is that? And they will say it themselves. It's within me. I just don't know how to access it.
As Shannon mentioned, we work with our populations a lot to, really understand the role that self-awareness plays in blocking us from being able to help be a game changer. And it's rare that we have someone that can really break down and give really specific examples of how to dive into this. So I'm so grateful for the wisdom that you have chosen to share with us today, and really helping people have exercises that are practical to help them start on this journey that may have been invisible to them. So thank you so much for being here with us today.
Oh no, you're welcome. I guess one thing, if I'm still allowed and if I'm not
Yeah.
over, one thing that I really wanted to share with people, right? And this really worked for me, is more of a daily reflection exercise. So people like journaling, people like to reflect. So
Yeah.
we live a very busy lifestyle, a very busy day, right? We're not very conscious of what's happening. Now, one thing that I would always recommend to people is that anything that happens in your life, nothing is random. Everything is happening for a reason. So everything in this life, whether you look at it from a growth perspective, experiences or perspectives are happening during that day to give you a very true reflection of where do you stand in your life. What do you need to grow? What do you need to change? What do you need to improve? And this is that daily litmus test, but we don't look at it that way. What we do is we see people, this person's annoyed me, this person's did that, this person's did that. So reframe, bring everything back and start to look at it as a very, very different perspective. And at the end of the day, just slowly start to reflect on it. What were the three things that you liked that made you happy today, right? What were the three things that you didn't like about today? And those things that you didn't like about today, really go into the emotions, because that will help you get in tune with why didn't you like it, right? And whenever these emotions are there, don't analyze the emotion, because this is what we start to do. But this person doesn't have this emotion. I'm always like this. I'm always like that. Just be very, very clear. This is the emotion. Accept that emotion, and then slowly start to move. Then the other aspect is what would you like to do differently tomorrow? And this would be a catalyst thing. So what you're seeing is that the way we're living our lives these days, we're just going on survival mode. I just did this, I finished this, I got that done. That's not what life is. Life is here to live life. So how do you go from surviving to thriving? And that thriving piece, because we have the ability to co-create, we don't use that. What would you like to change? Something in your day didn't go the way you planned it. What would you like to do differently? So we keep doing the same things, looking for different results, but design it again. And that's the ability. So that's one thing that I would really share with people, is just reflect on that in the evening. You're able to consciously reevaluate your day to see what you learned from that day. So then tomorrow when you go out, tomorrow's almost another exam. How are you prepared for that exam?
Thank you. Once again, this incredibly practical tool that people can put into effect immediately to support this transformation. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.
And thank you so much to our listening audience. To learn more about how to create bold, powerful change in the world, be sure to check out our book, Move Fast, Break Shit, Burn Out, or go to our website at catalystconstellations.com.
And if you enjoyed this conversation as much as we did, please take 10 seconds to rate it on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you have other catalysts in your life, hit the share button and send a link their way. Thanks again.